Correnti, who I think has been the most talkative U.S. attorney. I mean, he's circumspect, but he also has said,
I love that guy,
dangling little tidbits of the 7 politicians. Where do you think this is going to go from here?
Well, if you look at the indictment, which I'm sure you have, you have 2 high-level CVS executives.
E1?
E1. That remains. I mean, I think, and we're just speculating, but I don't see how that is not Tom Ryan.
Yep.
So when people talk about it, he mentioned bigger than Plenodome, Tom Ryan is a big player. He's got a lot of resources. He has far more resources than a Buddy Cianci.
And not hard to believe that John Salona would sing like a canary because, I mean, that's just the kind of... He was issuing press releases probably from prison if they'd let him, right?
Do you think Salona had these guys over a barrel? John Salona, who was a repairman in North Providence, what, the guys running CVS, they couldn't handle a John Salona? I don't believe that. The question is, could somebody roll on Ryan? And never mind, then you have the Blue Cross part of this. Where is Bill Irons play into this? Is Ryan the ultimate place where they're going to go? You remember CNC 1. Yep. They got Ronnie
They start
Glantz.
the small fish and then they moved
could
up.
not fully get him. You go back to the Kevin White investigation in Boston. They could not fully get Kevin White.
And in the Cianci thing, they thought that Frank Correnti was going to roll, and he didn't. In this case, what I've heard is, the reason we're not hearing Irons yet, and maybe some others, is you work your way up the food chain, and you got Kramer and Ortiz, who were fairly major players, but not up to the top yet. So I can imagine, though, at the State House, and I'm sure you've gotten the calls, there's a lot of nervous people up there.
There are, Jim, and the thing about a Salona thing is, look at the Cianci thing. I mean, when they greenlight, when the guy at the top greenlights that things are going to be done a certain way or that an element of corruption is acceptable, look how it then filters down. There's no way John Salona was alone. Irons is somehow involved in this. I don't see how Montalbano is clean in this whole thing, even though he keeps insisting. You know, he inadvertently forgot something. I think we're going to hear that.
Well, there's ethics charges he'll have to deal with, and possibly criminal. Let's shift gears just a little bit, because I do want to cover a lot of topics. Ralph Mollis. He's the gift that keeps on giving in North Providence. What is your... He had initial problems with his son and his stepson initially, and then I did a story about a week ago about him campaigning for John Sisto on state time and the appearance of that. What do you think about that?
I haven't had a chance to sit down with the Mollis people, but the clues were there during the campaign. I mean, this is a guy that didn't see a problem with taking money from members of organized crime. I think in North Providence, you go back to the Sal Mancini White Shoes crowd of North Providence. They have a different way, Jim. Their ethics are different than everybody else. And I think Mollis, I want to have access to him. I want to follow him. I think he's an intriguing figure. He's kind of like a throwback to the 80s when you could give cash and there were no rules as far as political campaigns.
What is your relationship with him? Did you have contact with him much?
Very little. He was just a minor player. I think we may have had him on once or twice because there was something going on in North Providence. I really don't know him that well. I mean, I want to also, there are various people I'm going to reach out to, and we're going to offer them a chance to either start fresh or have access to the program. Now, if they don't take it, then they do that at their own peril.
Attorney General Patrick Lynch most recently released the grand jury. He's been releasing information. Now, Lynch has been on this show, and he's portrayed to me that he wanted to get all the information out. My contention is if the Journal and other media organizations weren't forcing him to do this, he'd be a little less forthcoming. He disagrees with that. What's your take and the way this has been handled, both the sentencing and the release of the information and what that information has showed us?
I can't believe Bill Harsh lost that election, other than I don't think Bill Harsh was a good candidate. But if you look at the grand jury information that was released, you had the grand jurors all over the prosecutors trying to say, how is this not bad faith?
And steering it toward Dennis Locke.
Why is the fire marshal not involved? I think it's embarrassing. I think the whole way that thing played out, I think Kathleen Haggerty was in the right. I think they zeroed in on Beakley and the Dedarians, and he let the fire marshal walk. I think there were a lot of politics involved with the town of West Warwick and the fact that he was new and on the scene. I think that the information released in the grand jury, the grand jurors were asking them questions that they couldn't answer.
And this is video that we just got, the home video for TV. That's the most dramatic part, because these were people who were right there. We never would have seen this short of a trial. Do you think... I've heard some people say, short of the families themselves wanting the trial to come out, everybody else has kind of moved on. Do you believe that, or do you think the state really wanted a trial to hear all of this come out?
The state did not want a trial. I don't think, Jim, anybody involved with that wanted this trial. There are some families, and you have some high-profile people, Dave Kane.
Yeah, understandable.
And the anniversary coming up. But no, and this wasn't going to be one trial. I mean, this was going to be 2 trials. It was going to be both brothers.
Michael and then Jeff.
There was going to be a lot of painful information that was going to come out. And the sentencing of Beakley and the sentencing of the Dedarians was very emotional. But no, they didn't want this. I don't think they wanted this to come back with the officials in West Warwick. There is no reasonable explanation on why that fire marshal and the building inspector were not brought up in some sort of charges, and or Jack Russell, on the very least, conspiracy charges.
I know we got 3 years to go, but if and when Patrick Lynch runs for another office, is this going to hurt him, or is it going to be so far in the past people aren't going to really bring it up?
I think it depends on who runs against him and the type of campaign. Harsh did not go into certain areas. I still think it's questionable with some of the dealing with lead paint and the way that Lynch has not answered questions.
And taking campaign contributions.
It all depends on how they run against it. Sue Stenhouse ran against Ralph Mollis and tried to run an above-board campaign. Didn't even get into some of the organized crime stuff or some of the problems in North Providence. It all depends on who runs against them and the tone it takes.
Given the Republican Party in Rhode Island, if Karl Rove had been running that campaign, we would have heard a lot more about Ralph Mollis. Let me hold you there. We've got a lot more to get to. We do have to take a quick break, but we will be back with much